Hello viewers, so we are back with another round of kart racing here at Butmore Park. You may have seen the heats a couple of days ago. Very intriguing battles through the middle and the back of the pack, but this time we'll be fighting at the front of the pack up against the big boys in the heavyweight A-class final here. So starting second and managing to get second back after initially dropping down to fourth place. Now it's actually very difficult starting second because the guy on the right hand side on pole position has the right just to accelerate whenever he wants, and you have to react. So often the people on the pole side get a much better start compared to those on the outside. But on this occasion there was actually a red flag. So a big incident up at, you see on the right hand side there, just look over, someone crashed into the wall pretty badly. So red flag, have to restart the race. So this time I could actually learn from the start because I actually went too far ahead too early. So I'm going to back off here and just try to watch Joe start and try to get a much better start this time. So I kind of have to react to how the guy on the right hand side is going. And he's always going to get a slightly better start, but this time a much better reaction, as this time around the outside of Tim Hill through turn 1, I'm actually going to keep second place outright before we even get to hairpin 1. So a much better start. I've actually learned from our mistake on the first race. Got the job done a little bit better there. So settling into the race up behind Joe Holmes. It's always going to be a hard race up against Joe Holmes. Very, very fast, very, very robotic, I would say. Doesn't really make any mistakes, very consistent, makes very little mistakes, and just very, very quick. So to try to beat this guy is always a hard task. We're going to do our best here at Butmore Park. So this follows on from the last karting video. So the last one was 3 heats, which then decided your grid slot for this race here. So Joe getting the best 3 results. I got a first, second. He got, I think, 3 firsts, or 2 firsts and a second, I'm not sure exactly. But he got slightly better results than I did. He gets pole position, I got second. And at this point here, it's actually beginning to stretch out and just open out a bit of a gap at the beginning of this race. So I haven't quite got into this race as quickly as I would have liked, but we're going to make sure we don't give up and fight through right to the very end. You never know, could get a penalty, anything can happen, and there's always going to be a chance if you just keep fully in there and don't give up. So lots of questions over the last couple of videos regarding just the way that we race, just lots of questions about the racing. So the weight, so lots of people asking about the weight. So this series is divided up into heavyweight and lightweight. So I'm in the heavyweight category, where you have to be 90 kilograms. If you're not 90, if you're like a little bit below, you can just carry a bit of lead to make sure that you are 90. So I weigh normally about 86, 87 with all my karting gear, and then I just carry a few kilograms of lead, which makes me 90. That therefore makes it a bit fairer, as everyone can weigh up to that. Obviously, if you're 98 kilos or something above, then you're going to give away quite a lot of time, as you do lose quite a bit of time by being heavier. And then you've got the lightweights, which is 78 kilos, so if you're a little bit lighter, you can go in that category. So again, we're driving in the heavyweight category here. And this lap here, lap number 6, was the first real sign that I actually was gaining a little bit. So lap number 3, 4 and 5 we were trading not much of a gap, so he would gain half a tenth on me, then I would gain half a tenth on him, so it was really close. On lap 6 I just gained 2 tenths, and most of that was in the final sectors. He made a bit of a mistake through paddock, so you can see just how much closer I've got now. So certainly now the race is not over, but it's one of those races where for a spectator it might look a little bit boring because we're just going round and round and round and not much appears to be happening. There's no overtaking, but really, when you're behind the helmet, behind the visor, you're putting everything in and often just getting a complete stalemate and just not really making any progress. In fact, on this lap, I think he probably just pulled away slightly. So you see the gap here, 0.4 at the end of the previous lap, 0.457, so he gained half a tenth on me on that lap, and that kind of just shows you how close the margins are between the two of us on this race. And the thing we're looking for, so for those of you who watch the GT Sport videos, you all know just how powerful the slipstream is. And once you're about 3/4 of a second behind someone, you really begin to feel the slipstream. In the karts, it's a little bit closer than that. Normally when you're about 0.3 seconds behind, you really do begin to feel a bit of slipstream. And it's not like you can just fly past them at 100 miles an hour, but it's much easier to stick with someone and not let them get away if you are in their slipstream, if you're within that 3 temps. So that's all I'm looking for here, just to get within that little 3 temp margin, and it'll be a lot easier to try to stick with him if we can do that. So across the line we go to begin lap number 9, 4 laps to go. In fact, no, sorry, 5 laps to go. I need to get my maths right. As we come down into hairpin 1, the gap is very, very small now. I was actually quite confident with my line through hairpin 1, which we've just gone through there. That's normally where I was gaining quite a bit. Hairpin 2 wasn't gaining quite as much. In fact, Joe was normally getting away, if anything. But we're right on the cusp now of getting within that magical suck zone of 0.3 seconds. So we are, I think by this point, about 3 or 4 seconds clear of the field. It really is just a two-way fight between the two of us at this point. As we come through Senna, for the 9th time, he's looking behind most corners. He's definitely wary of my presence. But again, we've said it earlier, he doesn't really make too many mistakes, so it's very difficult to try to beat him. Even in this kind of situation, which is a pressure scenario, he's got someone right behind him who's hounding him down, and he's not really making many errors. So he's still driving very well, despite the pressure at this point here. So at this point here, I would say that is near enough 3 temps now as we come down the hill, and hopefully we can just begin to gain. We'll notice it, especially when we go up the hill at the end of the lap. That's where you're going to really feel the most slipstream on this lap. We come through paddock into Garda, again still looking behind. He definitely knows I'm getting closer as we edge towards the end of the race. Just 3 laps to go after this one, and this is where I can really feel that slipstream. Look how much closer I get now at the beginning of that straight, tucked in fully behind the wheel. See just how much closer I got. See, you can see I've probably gained about a kart length just on that straight alone. So 3 laps to go. We've got definitely race on now with he's going to go, actually you can see that goes defensive into hairpin 2. He definitely knows that I'm within range of going for that dive bomb overtake, or not even a dive bomb. I'm actually close enough just to go for a genuine move. So no weather to worry about here. It's not like the previous video where the rain was coming down in batches. Here is actually fully dry, and it was fairly cloudy still, but there wasn't really much threat of any rain, so we don't have to worry about that. The track is fully dry. The conditions are fairly ideal actually. As we come up to begin lap number 12, it goes very narrow into the first corner, and on the way through the space just opens up on the way out, and we're going to go up the inside, tiny bit of contact. We get the job done into hairpin 1 at the beginning of lap number 12. We're going to cover up into hairpin 2, make sure he doesn't go back for an instant reply, and just checking behind just to see the progress. I actually gapped him slightly already. I think he made a mistake through hairpin 2. So 1.5 laps left to go. Can we keep our position and go for a race victory in the heavyweight final? Coming up to Garda, going for the wide line, no need to defend, just having a look behind, going into the corners where he's most likely to go for a pass, and just making sure we take the correct line. If he's not close enough, there's no point in defending. If you do defend when they're not close enough, then they're just going to catch straight back up with you. Into the first corner, into hairpin 1 again, not covering up. Normally he does like to go for a move into hairpin 1, not covering up though. Going to cover up into hairpin 2 though, go defensive into there and keep the position for now. That is going to put him on my bumper though. As we go down the hill for the final time, half a lap left, under pressure now. The pressure basically switched from him to me into paddock. He's going to go for a move. It's a very late on the limit move, and I feel the contact. I go wide beyond the bollard, beyond the track limits, but we'll see if that is going to be a penalty. But for now I'm pretty convinced that was contact which pushed me wide, and I'm going to cross the line, fist bump in the air, and we're going to take the race win. Handshake between the two of us, and ultimately there was no penalty. I think it was a very fine line, that move, very fine line, and it could have worked. I've done a similar thing before, tried to lunge on the last corner. You might as well try it, but on that occasion I think there was just enough contact to send me wide. Okay, so the super final now. So this is a mix of all the best 12 heavyweights and the best 12 lightweights. So we have pole position courtesy of winning the heavyweight final. All the lightweights lined up on the even side of the grid, so 2, 4, 6, 8. heavies on the 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. So Joe Holmes was right behind me at the start, with Anwar in 5th, and we tried to pull away and extend this gap as early as possible. So this is the super final. The super final is probably the main thing I'm going for this year. So the main prize for winning the super final championship overall is a test day in a Ginetta race car, which will be a very awesome prize. And once again, you can see there we've got a red flag. So at the same corner as the S's, as the previous race, another big incident occurred, and we had to stop that race and start again. So away we go from pole position. You can see there, number 1 this time around, courtesy of getting the number 1 grid slot for this race, through turn 1 into hairpin 1. It's really a tick list. We mentioned this in the previous video. Lap 1 is normally just a tick list of at least trying to keep your position, not getting involved in any incidents, and ideally, if you can, try to pull away as much as possible. I wasn't quite able to do it this time, as I had to go defensive into hairpin 2 just to cover off Joe Holmes, as he followed me through turn 1 and hairpin 1 quite well. But settling into the race, in pole position, in the lead, and you see the gaps already beginning to open up quite a lot, and that really is in fact, let's just look at this for a moment, as this really does descend into a Forza-esque lobby. And at this point, oh my, just look at this, just look at that. I think we've got a new record for about 15 billion people abreast, wider than the actual track. And I'm not sure who's going to get a penalty out of all of that. Probably everyone. But absolutely mayhem behind. It just shows you, in these races, being at the front, it really pays. You just have to get away from the pack as much as possible. So getting a good grid slot, top 5 ideally, if you can start at the front, then it's going to help you massively. On this occasion, it's myself who started first, then it's Joe behind who started 3rd, and it's Anwar behind who started 5th. So the top 3 starters on the right hand side of the grid, all getting good launches and managing to pull away from the pack. And this point here is really often a case of just trying to put in some good laps and just break away from the pack together, and then you do your fighting at the end. It's kind of, in a way, like Tour de France. Anyone who watches cycling, you kind of know it's the tactics, kind of similar in many ways. Joe goes up the inside and goes for the pass. He's still on my left hand side there, couldn't quite force him off, or not force him off, but like try to edge him out to keep the position. But he basically had at least half a cart alongside. I couldn't just come across and force him wide. So he kept the inside into hairpin 2, gets the job done. So it kind of roles reverse here. I was hunting him down in the final, the heavyweight final. Now in the super final, he's going to try to edge away from me. No, he's actually just tried to overtake me, got the job done, and tried to pull away this time. So again, we're remembering that 0.3 of a second gap. We just really need to stick as close as we can to him to make sure that he doesn't pull away early on, and we lose that toe. That's the real main consideration, as we still have Anwar on our tail. So Anwar behind, he was the 2015 Club 100 champion. I was the 2016 Club 100 champion, and Joe Holmes is the 2017 and 18 Club 100 champion. So 3 drivers occupying the top 3 spots here, the champions in the last 4 years. So we've got quite good company at this point here, as you can see there as we pan out. Anwar very hot on our tail, and the guy in the orange helmet just behind, Rob Newman, he's very, very fast indeed, very good overtaker. He'll basically go for a move. If there's even half a cart worth of space, he'll just go for it. He just absolutely loves it, loves sending it, Danny Ricciardo style. And he finished 2nd in last year's championship, so very, very quick driver. So that's the kind of person we're trying to break away from. Part of the tactics, part of the game. Yes, I mean, we could fight. Joe could go defensive and try to block me off, but then all that will do is just back us up into the pack, and it will just invite more and more players into the game. And that's not really a scenario that any of us want. Ideally, we just want to break away from as many people as we can and just narrow down the numbers and try to chip away at the amount of people in this group. But at this point here, it's just going to be a 3-way group. Anwar is not going anywhere. He's going to stay firmly on our tail. At this point here, at the end of lap number 5, Joe is just beginning to edge away. It's the first signs here of him just edging away. You see he takes a wider line going into turn 1. And I might talk about this, or I will talk about this when I eventually do a track guide for this circuit in these karts. And I think the main thing there is really, actually it's about the same. It looks like you can take a wider line, which is actually quicker, but technically I think by taking the narrow line, which I take, you actually you cover less distance, so it actually balances out slightly. So I think it's actually ultimately roughly the same. So here we go then, lap number 9. So the last couple of laps just beginning to edge back towards the back of Joe, and there is a chance again of trying to go for a dramatic late move. So the kart balance is very good in this series. Most of the karts are within a couple of tenths, or at least like 1 or 2 tenths. So it's actually a very good balance. So a lot of questions again being asked in the comment sections of these videos. So please do ask any more questions if you have any, and I'll do my best to answer as many of them as I can. But you see here, this is the one problem I think I had. Coming up hairpin 2, he would just pull away. I don't know if you can quite see that. He would pull away maybe half a kart length. It's not much, but in a battle this close, that is it's big. It's a big difference. And ideally, I'd be gaining that back on the main straight. So normally in these karts, they're not exactly the same, but they are very similar. So if you're gaining somewhere else, if you're gaining somewhere, you'll lose out somewhere else. So at this point, definitely in the slipstream, with 1 lap to go, final lap, firmly in that slipstream, we could potentially go for a move. Not quite close enough for this first sector, but if we could work towards getting a good first sector here, we could go for a move later on. I just lose a bit of ground there through hairpin 1, and it's just not going to put me quite close enough. Going through hairpin 2, and again on the exit, just pulls away slightly, just opens up that gap, and that margin is fairly safe by this point. So if half a lap to go, is it possible to go for dive bomb? I was going to say of the century, but it's probably going to have to be of the millennium, as I'm quite far back there. I'm going to go defensive, look behind there. So the priority switched there really, as I wasn't close enough to go for an attack on Joe. I had to cover off to make sure I defended from Anwar, as he was still right on my tail. He followed me all the way through that race, and ultimately crossing the line in 2nd place. It was a really hard fought race, really good battle between the 3 of us. Not much in the way of position changes, but it's a very, very close fought race. Pretty much a stalemate all throughout, but good fun nonetheless. But there we go, another exhilarating battle, once again with Joe Holmes at Buckmore Park. It doesn't really get much closer between the 2 of us around this track. But I do hope you enjoyed it as always. Please let me know any questions you have, any thoughts you might have about the racing, about the series, and I shall see you next time. Thank you so much for watching as always. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.